A peaceful civil rights leader challenges discrimination in America. With powerful speeches and nonviolent protests, he inspires millions and helps bring major changes to the nation's laws. In the heart of the American South, amidst the stifling heat of racial segregation, a new voice began to rise, a voice that would echo through generations, calling for justice, equality, and peace. This was the voice of Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist minister from Atlanta, Georgia, whose unwavering commitment to nonviolence would ignite a revolution of conscience across the United States. His journey was not one of conquest with weapons, but of transformation through words, courage, and the unshakable belief in the moral heresy of the universe. He stood against a deeply entrenched system of Jim Crow laws that relegated African Americans to the status of second-class citizens, a system that enforced separation in schools, on buses, at lunch counters, and in the very fabric of society. Dr. King envisioned a different America, a beloved community where individuals would be judged not by the color of their skin but by the content of their character. This was the dream that would define his life as work and ultimately reshape the soul of a nation, challenging it to live up to its founding creed that all men are created equal. His leadership first captured the national spotlight in 1955 in Montgomery, Alabama, when Rosa Parks, a seamstress and civil rights activist, was arrested for refusing to give up her busit to a white man. The city's black community erupted in organized protest. A young, 26-year-old Dr. King was chosen to lead the Montgomery Improvement Association, which organized a citywide bus boycott. For 381 days, tens of thousands of African Americans walked, carpooled, and organized their own transportation systems, enduring harassment, threats, and economic hardship. They walked for miles to work, to school, and to church. Their unified footsteps are quiet but powerful testament to their resolve. During this time, Dr. King's home was bombed, and he faced constant threats against his life and family. Yet, he held firm to his principles of nonviolent resistance, a philosophy deeply influenced by Mahatma Gandhi. He preached love in the face of hatred, courage in the face of fear, and discipline in the face of provocation. The Montgomery bus boycott was a resounding success, culminating in a Supreme Court ruling that declared segregation on public buses unconstitutional. It was a landmark victory that not only demonstrated the immense power of nonviolent direct action but also established Martin Luther King Jr. as the preeminent leader of the burgeoning civil rights movement. Following the triumph in Montgomery, Dr. King co-founded the Southern Christian Leadership Conference (SCLC) in 1957, creating an organizational platform to coordinate and support nonviolent protests across the South. The SCLC, with its roots in the Black Church, mobilized communities to challenge segregation and voter disenfranchisement through sit-ins, marches, and voter registration drives. The past was fraught with peril. In 1963, King and the SCLC focused their efforts on Birmingham, Alabama, then one of the most racially segregated cities in America. The Birmingham campaign was a meticulously planned series of demonstrations, including sit-ins at segregated lunch counters and marches on City Hall. The city's public safety commissioner, Eugene Buchanan, responded with brutal force. The world watched in horror as television screens and newspaper front pages displayed shocking images of peaceful protesters, including children, being blasted with high-pressure fire hoses and attacked by police dogs. These images galvanized public opinion, creating a wave of outrage that put immense pressure on the federal government to intervene. It was during this campaign, while confined in a Stark jail cell, that Dr. King penned his seminal letter from a Birmingham jail. In this eloquent and powerful defense of civil disobedience, he argued against the calls for patience from white moderates, stating that justice too long delayed is justice denied. He articulated the moral urgency of the movement, explaining why African Americans could no longer wait for their constitutional and God-given rights. The letter became a foundational text of the civil rights struggle, a timeless call to conscience for all who would stand idly by in the face of injustice. The momentum from Birmingham propelled the movement toward its zenith in the summer of 1963 with the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. On August 28, a quarter of a million people, black and white, from all corners of the country, gathered peacefully at the Lincoln Memorial in a monumental display of solidarity. It was here, standing in the shadow of the great emancipator, that Dr. King delivered the most iconic speech of his life, and perhaps in all of American history. He began by outlining the injustices that still plague Black Americans a century after the Emancipation Proclamation, but then transitioned from a prepared text to an improvised, soaring sermon on his vision for the future. "You have a dream," he thundered, his voice resonating with passion and hope. He dreamed of a day when his 4 little children would live in a nation where they would not be judged by their skin color. He dreamed of a day when former slaves and former slave owners could sit down together at the table of brotherhood. His words painted a vivid picture of an integrated and harmonious America, a vision that captivated the nation and the world. The March on Washington was a powerful catalyst, creating the political will necessary for groundbreaking legislation. Its spirit and Dr. King's powerful oratory were instrumental in the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, a historic law that outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, or national origin and ended segregation in public places. Even with this monumental legislative victory, the fight was far from over. The right to vote remained a significant hurdle, as many southern states used poll taxes, literacy tests, and the outright intimidation to prevent African Americans from registering. In 1965, Dr. King and the SCLC brought their focus to Selma, Alabama, to launch a campaign for voting rights. The first attempted march from Selma to the state capital of Montgomery was met with horrific violence on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. State troopers and the local postmen attacked the unarmed marchers with billy clubs and tear gas in an event that became known as Bloody Sunday. Once again, the televised images of brutality shocked the conscience of the nation and the world, spurring a renewed wave of support for the movement. Dr. King, who was not present at the first march, returned to lead a second, symbolic march to the bridge. Finally, with federal protection provided by President Lyndon B. Johnson, the full march to Montgomery was completed. The events in Selma directly led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, a landmark piece of federal legislation that finally secured the right to vote for millions of African Americans. For his tireless efforts and the unwavering commitment to achieving racial justice through nonviolent means, Martin Luther King Jr. was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1964 at the age of 35, the youngest recipient at the time. In the final years of his life, Dr. King broadened his focus to address the deeper, systemic issues of economic injustice and poverty, which he saw as inextricably linked to racial inequality. He launched the Poor People's Campaign, a multicultural effort to demand economic and human rights for poor Americans of all backgrounds. He also became an outspoken critic of the Vietnam War, arguing that the resources being funneled into the conflict were draining the nation of the funds and the political will needed to combat poverty at home. This stance was controversial, alienating some of his former allies and drawing criticism from the Johnson administration. But for King, it was a matter of moral consistency. He could not decry violence in the streets of America while remaining silent about it abroad. In the spring of 1968, he traveled to Memphis, Tennessee, to support black sanitation workers who were on strike for better wages and working conditions. On the evening of April 3rd, he delivered his final, prophetic speech, "I've been to the mountaintop." In it, he seemed to foreshadow his own death, telling the assembled crowd, "It may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we, as a people, will get to the promised land." The next day, on April 4, 1968, as he stood on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. He was just 39 years old. The assassination of Dr. King sent shockwaves of grief and anger across the country and around the world. Riots erupted in more than 100 cities as a nation mourned the loss of its moral compass. Yet, the movement he built and the dream he so eloquently articulated did not die with him. His legacy is etched into the very fabric of modern America. His lives were led directly to the dismantling of legal segregation and the enfranchisement of millions of voters. His philosophy of nonviolence continues to inspire activists and the social justice movements globally, from the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa to pro-democracy movements in Eastern Europe and beyond. In 1983, his birthday was signed into law as a national holiday, a testament to his enduring impact. Martin Luther King Jr. was a true major for justice, a warrior for peace, and an apostle of nonviolence. He challenged a nation to confront its deepest flaws and to strive for its highest ideals. His journey was one of immense sacrifice, but his powerful speeches and the nonviolent protests inspired millions and helped bring major changes to the nation's laws.